we kept it tight because we didn't have a lot of time.
Mortgage contingency, I was talking about earlier.
So we've been asked to put a fine point on the.
Jamie has asked.
Jamie has asked to clarify this contingency for mortgage lending because in a tough market where we're trying to get our office accepted, Jen is in here and we had this heated conversation yesterday.
We did.
And so when you're receiving an offer, when do you put in the appraisal language to protect your buyer and when don't you? And there was a suggestion on a contingency sheet that you guys gave us a while back that said a caveat about a percentage and when to and when not and how you're protected. So what we wanted was more information on an explanation of how is that really, why wouldn't you put that language in?
All right, so let me try an easy one. If this doesn't work,
Don't do the 50-50.
because I thought of this today. If you're borrowing 80% of the sales price, okay?
Yeah.
And on the purchase sale agreement, it says that you're borrowing $100,000, okay? All right? And the appraisal comes in short, okay? You can no longer borrow $100,000, right? Because the lender's only gonna lend you 80% sales price. So therefore, you cannot meet the terms of the P&S. It says that you're borrowing $100,000. You can't borrow $100,000 because the house doesn't have the value.
Your loan's gonna get denied.
Your loan's going to get denied. Does that help?
No, that's clear. If the appraisal came in different and the buyer chooses they want to pay the delta of 20,000 and they have it,
Do that.
then they wouldn't really get denied lending
No, because then you would,
because you're saying,
you're gonna borrow less.
still give me this.
And you're gonna borrow less.
Value ratio.
Right, still give me this number, I'm gonna pay this much money. And on there, it said that we don't, and this is the conversation that Jen and I had yesterday, red flagging a seller right now in this market about appraisal language, everyone's leaving that out if they're that 20%, or if you wanna call it 80% loan to value. Instead of putting it in. And I said to Jen, I would put it in all the time just in case to protect my buyers because I wouldn't want them to lose their purchase and sale money if my pre-approval letter was, if I'm pre-approved for 500.
You gotta take the pre-approval letter is
Can I
nothing.
take this?
No,
Can I
you
take
throw
this?
it.
And I'm saying, Mitchell, don't talk, because I'm reiterating what I said to Mitchell yesterday, because then I said, I'll just see you tomorrow.
Okay, we've talked about this a few different times when we've done this, okay? And the reason we brought, it's exactly what Jamie was talking about, it's a tough market. You wanna keep your offers as clean as possible, right? And with the least amount in there to distract people. So what we talked about last time in February was that when you're submitting an offer, and remember, this is all about which hat you're wearing. But in this case, you're the buyer's agent, you're putting your offer together, your buyer is putting down anything 20% or less, okay? So they're 5%, 10%, 15, 20. Anything 20 or less, you do not have to junk it up by putting in an appraisal contingency. Because as long as the offer says they're borrowing 20% or less, there is a built-in safety net. Because you may not want to get your loan denied, because you might say, you have in the back of your head, I have a way to liquidate some stuff and pay the extra. But that's not the seller's, business that you can do that. That's the buyer's business that they decide to do that. But they want to have the option, if it doesn't come in, to get out. And the way they get out is they tell the lender, give me the denial, because I can't get the amount that's in the purchase and sale. Now, here's where you have to be super careful. People talk to us all the time about, I know that in this market, not so much in the market where I am, more in Middlesex South and Suffolk, but up here, I know that you don't always have buyers represented by counsel. Sometimes you're stuck with people that don't want to hire an attorney to represent them. They're just gonna use the bank attorney for the closing, but they don't have anybody helping them with the purchase and sale negotiations. And they think it's just a standard form. Well, newsflash, no, it's not. There's no such thing as it's just a standard form. There are two standard formats that we're used to in all markets in Massachusetts. The Mass Association of Realtors Board form and the Greater Boston Real Estate Board form. The Mar form is more prevalent up here, the greater Boston is more prevalent down where I am. But it doesn't matter, because all lawyers, all sellers' attorneys and buyers' attorneys have riders that they add to these things. And the riders offset the underlying contract. They all say, in the event that there is a difference between the rider and the standard form, the rider prevails. So when I represent a buyer and I look at an offer and my buyer is putting down 20% or less, the first thing I look at in the form, in the mortgage contingency, if the seller's attorney has put, buyer shall borrow no more than the amount that was in the offer, I cross out no more than. I don't want it to say no more than. I want it to say the amount they're borrowing. That's closing the loophole. Does that make sense? Okay?
I think this is a big one though. Like, I feel like I almost want to put this part in an email and we'll talk about that later. Because when you're representing seller, you're protecting seller. When
That's
you're
right.
representing buyer, you're representing buyer.
Who's that?
But this
Who's
is
offering
how
you
your
yours?
company works. You would assume that every attorney works this way. What I need my agents to understand is that is not true. There are a lot of attorneys out there that are not detailed or efficient or any of this.
We
And
have,
so putting that rider that you talked about,
And
Yes.
all riders are different,
correct,
right? Like there's, I'm in the middle of a transaction right now where I represent a seller. It was supposed to be a really straightforward, easygoing condo transaction. Buyers were all hot. My realtors told me, oh, this is gonna be simple. There are some things going on with the association. They had a project pending. And they literally buried the buyer prior to the offer with all kinds of condo docs and meeting minutes and everything about the project. So I said, okay, who's the seller's attorney? When they told me who the seller's attorney was, I went, oh, no. Because I knew, the minute I heard that name, I'm gonna get a 15-page freaking rider. And it's gonna be over the top, and she's going to drive me nuts. So I warned my clients and my realtors, I don't care how simple you think this is, it just got 10 times more complicated because of this one person. And sure enough, she has been torturing me since last week. And
it's
we have
good to
gone
know that you guys get tortures and it's not
back
just the
and forth and
realtors.
back. This particular, she's a young attorney, working for a large place, which I will remain nameless. And I've had go around with her in the past.
But has the initials of.
Ding, ding, ding.
I've had go arounds with her so badly in the past that I have literally called her boss and said, tell that pit bull to back off, or this whole transaction is going sideways. And he's told her, you better just back off because Anne Marie's not going to. And eventually she does, but it's a pain in the butt. So my clients think that the buyers are trying to get out of it because of all the roadblocks. And I said, I guarantee you they're not trying to get out of it. It's their lawyer. They probably don't even know that she's on the brink of you telling them where they can go, which they are. My client's like, can we get rid of these people? Because this lawyer is horrible. And I said, I know. So there is such a thing as over lawyering. But what we try to do is just, we look at certain common sense things and try to close loopholes. So if I'm wearing my seller's attorney hat, I'm looking at it with different eyes than if I'm wearing my buyer's attorney hat. But in the end, for this topic, when you're a buyer's agent, just make sure, particularly if they're not using an attorney, make sure however you word the offer makes it into the purchase and sale agreement and it does not vary. Because if they start putting other language in there like no more than, then you've created gray area. You never want gray area in a purchase.
right, see, you know that if you're copying the language from the offer directly to Venus, that everybody knew that language when they signed the offer. So nobody can say, that's not what I meant, did it. As soon as we change it, the other lawyer changed it, well, then that's not necessarily what the people wanted. So even, sometimes it's against our better judgment, even copying the language, because the language ain't great. But, it's vague or it doesn't, do the if not, then what test, which I've taught you all over the years. But we copy it exactly for that reason. Everybody's agreed to that. There should be no surprises.
Yes, go ahead.
I have 2 comments. So it was interesting because the client over the weekend had 13 offers, right? And they were looking at about half of them said it was subject to the property appraising at or above the purchase price. But I had on the spreadsheet, the column, and said they all are, because they were all 20% or less. But the clients, when they were looking at them beforehand, we're separating those out, like these, well, then we might have an appraisal issue on this house, so these are subject to appraisal, and no, they all
They
are.
are allowed.
But they didn't, so that column was all the same on it, or just whether anyone was gonna cushion a floor or
Right, right,
10,000,
right, right.
20,000 towards the appraisal was the only thing that made a difference. But I talked to a lender friend, Jane, who said, the reason it gets denied, you wanted to know the reason it gets denied? Yep, because, the deal that they have, if it was 20% before, and all of a sudden, the loan to value has to change because it didn't come in, they get PMI, and they
Right.
can sign up for that.
So that's what-
They could close the PMI.
Put the hands down, put the hands down, because
That's
yesterday,
what I
Ding,
am
ding,
saying.
ding, ding.
that's what you kind of said, but
And
I
if you already
clarified
had
because I talked
PMI.
to two more attorneys and a lender, and it was all really based around this
That's-
PMI.
That's crushing.
And
It's not
PMI.
crushing, I
She
needed to
didn't believe us.
understand, it's not that, but this is what I wrote yesterday. We really need a class taped on how to read a purchase and sale, even though I say this to our agents, it's not my job to start a purchase and sale, I don't want my agents really starting a purchase and sale.
Don't
I
compare
advise
purchase
not
and sale.
to do that, stay in your lane, but you still check that you have a responsibility to sellers and buyers, so when the purchase and sale is ready, I want you to be familiar with what it looks like, and I want a cheat sheet of maybe 10 items, 3 items that we should look at. That rider that you're talking about is a huge one, in my opinion, if someone's gonna take the chance, Jen, to not write how to, the appraisal portion. Because if they're not writing that protection, I wanna make sure that that rider is in there on the other side.
Yep.
Because that attorney that doesn't put that in there, that's where we're losing
Jamie, I've
purchase
been
and
trying to
sale.
get that tape in that class for 20 years.
I mean, why didn't you just say it, Mitchell?
Well, you're relatively new
But
to
it's true.
you're new to the party.
It's true.
I mean, I'll say this, and I think you'll agree with this. I think Keller Williams does a fantastic job nationally of training you in the business of realtor.
Yeah.
But because it's national and not local,
Yeah.
there's not a great job done on the, you have, whether you like it or not, you need to understand the legal part of this.
Right.
Because it's just reality. But there's nobody to tell you.
Mhm.
And it doesn't come with the package. And I've been trying and trying, but you know, of course, it's become secondary. I would love to have a class for that.
So that's, just so everyone that's on there. So it's on the videotape. So, what we've created, Mitchell, because this will and this will help with the agents in here. So we've created a Google platform with color boxes on a sheet. So it almost looks like the first page of a website.
Mhm.
And on this website, it's color coded for documents, technology, quick links for your office, this, that. So in the document portion, when they click on how to read a purchase and sale, how to write an offer, how to explain a mass disclosure, how to fill out a lead form properly. When they click the box, it's going to go to the YouTube taping of
Right.
Mitchell and Ann doing something like we're doing today.
Right.
So that it's an interactive, under an hour, so that they can hear it and they can see why it's the way that it is.
Sure.
So we need more of those, let's just call it a library
Yep.
of that. So our next one that we're gonna be talking about is the purchase and sale. Because the purchase and sale and what we're seeing with attorneys, not with you, with other attorneys, is they're lazy, the industry has changed. If you all don't know right now on Zoom, the attorneys don't make a lot of money. You think that they do, but they don't. Back in the day, when you could throw in title insurance and this one and that one, it was different. But a lot of attorneys on a buy side or a sell side, it's under $1,000. And they're taking the liability, the responsibility, doing all this stuff, and you're making $8,000 on a $500,000 transaction. So you have to understand the purchase and sale
Yep.
and the key points to look at, especially when you're using other attorneys.
Or
They're
if,
not
or even
following
worse,
through.
if your client isn't using an attorney.
Correct.
I mean, if you have a buyer who's not using an attorney, then, you end up with more responsibility because they start asking you questions.
Mhm.
And you don't want to be the one that gives them the wrong answer, even accidentally. I mean, the two worst words in a purchase and sale agreement? As is. As is until when? As is, as of when. I see that over and over. I represent a buyer, I get a purchase and sale from a seller's attorney, and it's got all over, peppered through the whole thing, as is, as is. I have to keep changing every one to say, as is, as of the time of the home inspection,
as
or if they
seen
waived
on
it,
a
the
home.
offer to purchase. If it just says as is, then it could mean the day of the closing. So if something breaks between now and closing, the seller's gonna say, oh, it said it was as is, I thought it meant the day of the closing. No,
And we have to
you
be
have to
especially,
qualify it.
we have to be especially careful because people waiving their home inspections.
Well, that's what I want
So
to
the,
ask
so the
about.
language now changes from as of the home inspection to as of the last viewing or
As of the offer to purchase.
or the offer to.
So I have a question,
Yeah.
because, you guys know I've been doing this a long time. And I really struggle with the whole waiver of home inspection, because I feel as a buyer's agent, it is a level of protection for me. And by telling my client to, look, the only way you're gonna buy this house is if you waive your home inspection. You know, when I know there's other realtors out there that are doing that and feel okay about it because they don't understand the liability.
What percentage up here in this market, what percentage of home buyers are waiving right now, would you say?
More than 50.
More than
I'm
50%.
telling
To the
you,
point where
down in
Easy.
Mid-South,
I was thinking-
it's like, it's the majority.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And not just that, to me,
Because they
first
have
time
the
home buyer
bandwidth.
has no business waiving home inspection and financing,
I
and
agree.
closing in a month. There's no safety net at all.
So, but they're getting creative with and Jen and I talked about this yesterday. They're getting creative by, they'll cancel out the home inspection contingency. And they'll say that within the purchase and sale, you know how it says, and everyone's different, so this is another, we're gonna add this to the sheet. How many times can you view
Access
the
provision, an
the
access provision.
property? I mean, Janine, unlimited. I mean, so but if it gets accepted from the other attorney that didn't read that, then it's kind of
Right.
obsessive, but
Usually
it's unlimited.
Usually try to.
Let's see four, right? So some people in their offer are saying we're waiving the home inspection, but we are gonna bring in either home inspector or a contractor during purchase and
You're
sale
setting your-
for our knowledge anyway. And that's how they're getting away with that specific holdup. There was another one that somebody wrote, Jen, that was creative on yours about home
To waive
inspection.
the results of the inspection?
No, just
Is
hold, we're just waiving the negotiation
Right, but they want-
tactics
But you
of
know what's
Yeah.
worse than that?
Inspection.
of the
What's
inspection.
even worse than that is the ones who come in and say, oh, we're gonna do a home inspection for information purposes only.
Yeah, right, that's what I was just gonna say.
Okay, well, if it's for information purposes only,
Sure.
you're gonna do it after you give us the second deposit and we sign the purchase and sale
We're a
agreement,
tough crowd.
right? Not prior, because otherwise it's just a
Right, 'cause
bait
if
and
you,
switch.
right, if you're doing the informational thing, before the second deposit comes in, the worst thing, I mean, you'll lose $1,000. But that, you know, in the scheme of things, that may be a great
So
thing for the buyer to give up, only
I
give
was
up.
talking to Jim Wright yesterday from RJ Home Inspections. He's a friend of mine. And I'm like, he's like, what is going on out there?
It's a wild, wild west.
And I
Real
told him, I
wild,
said,
wild
"Jim,
west.
if you wanna walk a mile in my shoes tomorrow, good luck. But he said that the home inspections for them, they're down, like they have no business going on right now. And so yesterday, I got a text from his business manager saying that they were allowing a home inspector to go on your
On your
showing when you're going to make an offer
A lot of them.
for $300. So you can take your home, but again, that still screams liability to me, like, the home inspector will be pulling that circuit breaker panel off, the cover of the circuit breaker panel off.
I mean, here's the bad news.
If that wasn't enough.
Don't even tell me, like,
No,
there's
no,
gotta be a way out of this.
part of your role, in my view, part of it is along the lines of what you're saying. Some people, it is not appropriate, and you need to know your customer, to have them waiving these things. It's just not appropriate for them, whether money's.
It's never appropriate,
No,
Mitchell.
no.
No, that's not true. That is absolutely-
I don't agree with that. But I would say I would say that forgetting even the specifics of the transaction, your own client, it's not appropriate for. I'm not even talking about the transaction.
Yeah.
Your own client, and let me just say, you shouldn't, my opinion, a first timer should never be doing this. Yes,
It's interesting because we're talking to the seller who obviously wanted to take the ones who were waiving inspections
Of course.
first. But then when we were talking about it, the top one, they wanted to have an inspection, but they were just going to look at, they were gonna look at the whole house, but just look at structural. And she was nervous about it, she goes, they could still, I mean, they crossed the paragraph out and they put it was, it was only the just structural, that's all they wanted.
But pre-PNS?
Pre-PNS.
In the office.
But wait, I said, what are you afraid of? You had your home inspected 2 years ago, and it is, I get it, it's the buyers want, they're first time home buyers, they wanna have an inspection. You're not afraid of anything, and you've got 12 offers right behind them. They're petrified that they don't want out of this thing. So they're gonna do it.
Again, but you need to know your own people.
I think that's a great key point, because
You can't boilerplate this stuff. You can't. And yeah, you can be thinking about the paycheck you're not gonna get because you're doing this. And you can be thinking about the transaction that you're not gonna be able to put together. And you can think about the fact that you're never gonna find something for these buyers in this marketplace. But that's the way it is. That's the way it
And
is.
it's not cookie cutter. Remember the story I told you last time about the people that I had that were buying an air? They're paying $569 and the appraisal came in 104 under. Remember that story? They still want it. I was ready to write a release for them. I said, come
you
again?
already had it written typed in.
I'm like, come again? Like, I'm writing up the release, and they're like, no, don't tell them we're gonna get the money. And I'm like, okay. I mean, because it's all in the eyes of the beholder. So to these people, this was the house they were going to nest in. They didn't care what the appraisal said, because they figured it was sort of a unique property on a lake, and there weren't a lot of comps. So they're like, we're not sure that the appraiser was right. So we'll just come up with the extra 6 figures.
But
And
that's
I'm like, hey, it's
obviously,
your money and you're gonna live there, not me.
but reality is not many people buying a $500,000 house have
Are gonna-
an extra $100,000.
I mean, I was shocked.
You're upside down.
Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be buying a $105,000, they'd be buying a $1 million house. So.
But I mean,
that's
I've
an
got
exception.
people like that, and then I got people in Cambridge paying, $500,000 over the asking price. All the time,
Really?
all the time,
But anyway,
okay? So you have to know your person. So everybody's different. It's definitely, even after 35 years and 38 years of doing this, nothing's cookie cutter. Absolutely not. We learn something
no,
new
and
every week.
I will be the first to tell you, I get riders all the time that the lawyer is slapping it on with having nothing to do with the specifics of the transaction. So it can be talking about a condominium, and there's no condominium, all that kind of stuff, because they go through your P&S, they look at the specifics.
To cover themselves.
They cover themselves, and they badge it, they slap on the rider, and off you go.
One of the things you have to be very careful with, if you have clients who, are with an attorney, is that it is very common for sellers' attorneys to put language in there saying that the transaction is subject to them getting insurable title. I absolutely want insurable title on 100% of my transactions, but I don't just want insurable title, I want clean, marketable insurable title. I want suspenders and a belt, okay? So when I see that, I edit that to, in front of where it says insurable, I say clean, marketable. Because the standard language in every purchase and sale agreement, before they start messing with the riders, is that they have to transfer clean, marketable title, okay? Meaning, there's no clouds on it. If it's insurable only, that means there's a possibility that there's a title cloud that an insurance company will insure over, which is fine if you really want the house and you want to buy it with a cloud on it because you have that safety net. But when you go to sell a property that you didn't have clean, marketable, because there was a cloud that was insured over, that doesn't mean your buyer down the road agrees with you. A buyer may say, sorry, I'm glad I have the ability to get insurance, but I also want no cloud whatsoever. I want clean, marketable title. So.
And let me give you a little insight to our jobs. We are very much driven by what title insurance underwriters say. We get titles that come back, we read them, there are issues. We have to get permission from title insurance companies as to what. But that only takes care of it from an insurance point of view. It doesn't necessarily take care of it. Because marketable can be, it's never going to be marketable. And there are things that have been carried over and kicked down, the can's been kicked down the road for 50 years.
So these are just little things that are like, almost like little bombs that are sitting in your purchase and sale agreement that, we read them to close the gaps. So we're looking through there to see anything, depending on which hat we're wearing, that helps our personal client, whether it be the seller's attorney or the buyer's attorney. So we don't just look at them and say, oh, that's standard, here, sign it. No. We always are gonna mark it up, we're always gonna have them look it over. And what I do is I always send to my clients and their realtors, because I wanna make sure that there's this extra set of eyes on things like inclusions, exclusions. Because sometimes it's not readily apparent in the offer, and then someone will call me and say, oh, they're taking those mounted TVs.
Yeah, and.
What does that mean? Are they taking the mounts? Just the TVs?
Are they
Are they fixing the
professional?
wall? I mean, it opens up all kinds of.
Right, and, no, when I send something out for review by the customer, or by you guys, I'm not looking for you to comment on the legalese. That's my job. I'm looking you to comment on the facts. Facts of the transaction that are unique to the transaction, to make sure they're consistent, A, with the offer, and B, even more importantly, what your expectation
And
is.
that's where I feel like the class needs to be taught on, with the purchase and sale being so thick, whatever contingency language is. So again, everyone makes mistakes, the attorney, I feel like people don't understand. It's not just the attorney in the transaction of the attorney involvement. There's your paralegal. If you have a bad paralegal, then it makes you a bad attorney. So the paralegal has to be paying attention. And sometimes the numbers are wrong, the dates are wrong, Essex County versus this county, clients, whatever. There are certain things that you should be looking at. The things that are in the offer, I would like for a class or for everyone to understand where to find them in the purchase and sale. Where are they living
Easy.
as a quick,
It's pretty much the
You know what I
same, it's
mean?
pretty much the same paragraphs
Yeah.
in each one, Paragraph 2 is a certain thing, paragraph 10 is a certain
Right.
thing. And unless someone's created their own purchase and sale agreement,
Yeah.
some of us do that, but most of us try to mirror the
And just because you brought this up.
Yeah.
Our paralegals, my paralegal's gonna be 32 years, Mitchell's been with him over 20 years. Even with all that experience, neither one of them drafts purchase and sale agreements.
Right.
We do our own purchase and sale agreements, we negotiate our own purchase and sale agreements, we finalize them. Our paralegals have nothing to do with purchase and sale.
Why would a real estate agent write a purchase and sale agreement?
You want me, okay,
don't get me started.
That's a legal
I will tell you
document.
exactly why.
Mitchell will tell you.
Because they are afraid to tell their client they need to spend another $1,000, whatever it is, on the lawyer.
So they take on that
So they
responsibility.
take,
That's
because they're
ridiculous.
afraid of their customer.
Wow. Kind of thought that might be the
Yeah.
answer.
I mean, but there's a whole bunch of things that, and we don't want to get too started on this, but realtors are afraid to discuss with their clients, or afraid to even negotiate with their clients, or might have a bump in the road with their clients, so they just go along and they end up with things that they're not.
It's also whoever taught you, so you have to look at generation gap of like 5-year increments or 10. Whoever comes in the industry, who's ever helping them at the time, whether it's a company umbrella, whether it's a mentor, whether it's this, however they do it, they're going to show the next person how they've done
To your-
it. So in old school,
Right, to your point.
20 years ago-ish, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, it was very customary for some reason for when I first got into it 11 years ago, write your own purchase and sale. And I was like, no
To your
way,
point,
why would you do
I'll
that?
take it back even further.
Yeah.
When we got started, people never had lawyers. Not even sometimes, never. And the realtors did the peanut, we only represented banks.
Mhm.
And we didn't have any seller reps, and we didn't have any buyer personal representation.
And we didn't buy our agency.
Right.
So we only had
Right.
seller agency,
Right,
like we only had seller and fiduciary
right,
now.
so the buyers were getting screwed time
Right.
after time. Lot different. Something easier for us.
Mhm.
Easier for us. But we actually charged more and did less.
Right. And a lot of sellers don't use an attorney. The buyer agent uses the attorney. And the sellers feel like, what do I need
I
an
mean, up
attorney
here, that's
for?
true, that's up here, because where
Yeah,
I
up
am
here.
here, we're in Middlesex and Suffolk
Yes,
and
it's
Norfolk,
true up here.
every, all of sellers.
And New Hampshire, we won't even start.
Don't get
This
started
is
with
just
that.
Massachusetts,
Yeah.
like, we're not New Hampshire
I
today,
just had
but
a property go under agreement, that my offer was accepted, and I got an email from the list side of buyer, and hooray, I got accepted after. But I got a text from him, he's like, so where's my purchase and sale? And I texted back to him, where's your seller's attorney?
Right.
So he said, oh, I never involve attorneys, and I'm like, well,
And you're on it.
then you're on it, because it's not the buyer's agent responsibility to start that purchase and sale. Here's the buyer's attorney info, so you can start that process with that, and so now he's like, oh, I didn't know the list agent was supposed to do the purchase and sale, I'm like, where are we even practicing real estate?
You mentioned something that I'd like to change, it's still part of purchase sale, but, having clear title. So, a lot of times our agents get frustrated because we're pulling at the last minute. And then we find something wrong with it. And of course, whose fault is it? The attorneys. So, when do you typically, in your firm, what does the checklist look like on when you're pulling to see if we're gonna have a red flag or a non-red
We do the
flag?
title exam immediately upon the P&S being signed.
Okay.
Unless it's really far
Oh, yeah, I mean,
away.
if it's a new
Because
construction.
we don't wanna have like
it's a
stale
year.
title, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
but if
you have-
it's a typical closing that's closed in 4 to 6 weeks, we order it as soon as the purchase and sale comes back to us signed.
Okay.
So if things are going, just to further take that, if things are going okay, and we get them, the titles back in the title exams back in about 2 weeks from when we ordered them, which is good. And I actually read all the titles of the firm now, and I try to turn them around in a day. And we get the, and then we, if there are issues, we immediately, first of all, the first thing I'll do is I might have to go title, as I talked about before, or the title insurance underwriter and find out if something needs to be fixed and how does something needs to be fixed. Sometimes things are so esoteric. 38 years isn't enough. I mean, you know, I need, it was 100 years to figure this stuff out. And then once I know that, then we go to the attorney on the other side. Again, the seller's attorney saying, okay, here's the issue, here's what we're being told, here's what you need to do, and they'll either agree or disagree. But we do it right away. I mean, so you,
So you pull title, or do you have somebody in
we
your
have
office that works?
examiners.
We have several examiners who send us the
They
abstracts.
send the abstracts, I read the abstracts, make sure they're committed, and we do what's called a title commitment, which just simply says, Leo takes the information from the abstract, puts it in a much shorter form.
So let's say that somebody didn't pay for title insurance and there's lots of problems. Let's go back this way.
Owner's title.
This is owner, yeah, I'm throwing it all into that.
Yeah.
And so seller wants to sell, but of course they're oblivious, they're like, when they bought the house, they didn't want the title
Yeah,
insurance.
and then they give you the nobody told me.
And like, I have no idea if that's sitting in a book and page somewhere, I didn't know there was X, Y, and Z problems. Who pays for those problems and what does it look
Seller,
like?
if they don't have insurance.
Seller.
And what could that look like if they don't have that?
It doesn't,
Depends on the
it
story,
could be
right?
anything.
Yeah.
Now, the good news is, and I will tell you this, the vast majority of people have an owner's policy of title insurance and don't even remember about it. And the reason for that is, they bought their house 20 years ago, they stuck it in a drawer, which is what you do and you hope you never need it, right? But unlike all other
And you
insurance,
got, and you
you
get
don't
rid of
pay
the,
for it every year.
the bureau.
So you forgot about it, because you paid for
It's
it
not gonna
once,
be anywhere with
you
it.
paid for it once, and that's why you don't remember that you
Oh,
bought it. It's not like all other insurance that's on your head.
But I will tell you, when we have buyers.
Research it,
Well,
research
But
it,
that's
find
somewhere
out.
on the HUD.
On the settlement statement, yeah, if you find your old settlement statement, it'll tell you whether you bought insurance, and if you call the attorney who did your closing, they have, people call us all the time, you closed something for me 20 years ago, I have the records, and I can tell them if they have title insurance.
Well, why would you pay for double? So
What do you mean double?
like, let's say that you're doing title, let's say that the attorney says, Jamie, you should really do title insurance, and I'm like, Mitchell, add title insurance. But somehow my lender rolled in title insurance on lending.
This is a fabulous question.
Isn't this great today? I'm on my
Okay, guess what? The lender's policy doesn't protect you. The lender's policy protects the lender if you go into foreclosure and they
That
own the
needs to be
house,
explained, this is where it gets,
okay?
But it's not double, you
No,
only have
it's not
lenders, you have lenders.
Listen, we
and
just went through this. I know
Yeah,
this,
higher
Jen.
pays for the lenders
what I'm
and the
saying
title
is,
insurance.
this is a big thing that she's talking about, because the lender, listen, everybody has their role in the transaction. Agent wants your commission, period. Mitchell and them wanna hurry up and get get 6 of 10 transactions to make what you just made on a commission. And the lender wants to make his points, and he doesn't wanna make any concessions and doesn't wanna make any mistakes because he eats it.
Right.
So everybody is in it for that portion, by the way. You think it's the client, but we're just gonna talk some real numbers.
Absolutely.
When that happens, sometimes the lender and the attorney, they're just not on the same page. If something happens there, it's not a personal thing, it's this what we're talking about with insurance. And it's explained wrong. So I want you as agents to understand the difference between the homeowner policy versus the
To
title.
your point, how right you are. There
Thanks,
are
Mitch.
loan officers, that's extent realtors, who will tell people they don't need owner's policy.
Right,
Why will they do that? Because it makes the numbers look better.
right.
And it makes, and the customer doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. And it's voluntary, so voluntary means bad. Someone's trying to, get some bucks out of me. So that's what happens. And we never find out that,
Right.
because the customer.
But Mitchell, if by federal law, loan officers have to issue loan estimates within so many days of taking a loan. And they have to list the owner's premium by law. Now, what happens is, a loan officer will take in a new loan, and they'll email us and say, I understand you're gonna be our closing attorney, can you send me the premiums and the closing fees so that I can do my loan estimate? So we look it up, because it's all a formula online. We put in we say, what's the purchase price, what's the loan amount, and it spits out the formula for us, and we give it to them so they can prepare the loan estimate. So whether they may tell them, oh, to save money, you don't have to buy that, which is really stupid.
No, but
Because
what
you couldn't give me a house with a.
What happens is, the customer gets that loan estimate, they say, what's this? They call the loan officer, loan officer says, well, we have to tell you, you just said,
They have to
we have
tell
to
you.
tell you this, but you don't
It's
need
on,
it.
But you don't need
You
it.
don't need it.
This is like
And
really.
the
Not a good loan officer would say that. Like, Jason's never gonna say that to anybody. That's never gonna happen, okay?
Right.
But here, just so everybody, just to give a quick, primer on this. A lender's policy is required to get a mortgage. You're not gonna get a loan if you don't buy the lender's policy, okay? If you buy an owner's policy at the same time, you get a break on the price. It's a simultaneous issue price. The last thing you wanna do is close with a lender's policy and say, I'm not gonna buy the owner's, and then decide to buy it later. That's 10
Because
times more money.
then you are paying twice.
Right,
That's
because
right.
that's a lot more money. So you get a break by simultaneously, and you pay for it once,
Yeah.
and it lasts as long as you own the house. If you have the house for 30 years, it's still gonna last, okay? So there's nothing, it's crazy not, and if you have an owner's policy and you refinance, you get a break on your refinance loan policy, because you have an owner's
So
policy.
the problem is to your point, it depends on the quality of the explanation. Because if the explanation is lousy, let's say the owner's policy costs $1,000 for the sake of discussion. The consumer doesn't know anything, sees $1,000 for an owner's title insurance policy, $1,000 for a flat screen TV. I'm gonna get the flat screen TV tomorrow, and I'm gonna get the benefit of a flat screen TV. I don't know what the hell they're talking about with insurance. So I'm gonna get the television. And that's because of a poor explanation or no explanation.
Right.
And they don't ask, so you don't know that it's an issue.
Now, the good news is, we do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of closings a year. You can count on your fingers how many people that close with us don't buy title insurance. Because we send them the information, when the few people that are on the fence, we send them information about it. And then they read it and they say, oh, I want that for sure.
No, but we have, John, one sec, my favorite is when it's a younger person buying something and the parent gets involved. And the parent tells them they don't need it. Because when the parent bought the house 40 years ago, it didn't exist.
I had two of these this week, and one of them was my son too, and he's an attorney, so he said, why, it's optional, why do I need it? And
Not really.
not really.
Obviously.
And I tell you, it's the same story every time. I had a client and he was adamant. He had researched it and he was adamant that owner's title really just was covering lawyers' asses. And that if it was a lawyer that made a mistake on when they did the title, it should be their issue, not his issue. Wait, and so
I
then
have a
he
good
said,
point,
I said, everyone gets it. You ask anybody, everyone gets it. And he goes, well, they're all lemmings. I'm not a lemming, right? And so he said he didn't want it. And we got to 10 days before closing, and there was an issue on the house that they were buying. And he said, what do you mean there's an issue? Can I not buy it? And I go, well, hopefully they got owner's title. And he's like, what do you mean? So we're like, yeah, well, if they had
So
owner's
we already
title,
talked
then they
about
bought
this.
it. And so we went through the whole thing. Luckily, they did have owner's title. He
So
was
he's
able to
declaring.
buy it. And when we went into the closing, it's Steve Bernard. He went into the closing and he goes, Steve, can we add that owner's title to at this point? And he goes, yeah, we can still do that. And I leaned over and I go, lemming.
Well, that's the best.
Just so you know,
That's a great
Massachusetts,
story. You gotta see that one.
You remember I talked about suspenders and a belt? Well, in Massachusetts, if you close up with a mortgage, the bank attorney has to certify the title sheet. So that's true. So you can call us years later and say, I have a problem, and we're gonna help you. The problem is, what if what we have to do to help you is gonna take 6 months, and your buyer doesn't wanna wait around? If you have an owner's policy, we're gonna get a reissue for you, just like that happened for Jen's son. And that's why you have time insurance.
What if the lawyer's not around anymore?
What if
The law
lawyer
firm-
died?
Yeah,
The sole
well,
practitioner was not around anymore.
the law firm.
Doesn't
will-
matter, they certified
you know,
you.
that kind of stuff.
And in New Hampshire,
Isn't it
oh my
like
God,
the
they'll
sign
buy
off
us.
too, right, like a sign off on.
Yeah.
There's no certification.
Live free or die. So even though I want agents to stay in their lane, I'm almost gonna contradict what I wanna say, but there still needs to be a cheat sheet that you understand these things to help in this collaboration of selling the property, because when there is a cloud or a problem or this, people just wanna blame. It doesn't matter. You're gonna look bad as a real estate agent because you didn't tell me, you suck as an attorney because you didn't tell me, my lender is bad because he didn't tell me, when really, maybe you were being told, it just wasn't told properly. So imagine
weren't-
if
or
your
you weren't
value
listening.
proposition as an agent was, even whether it's in your digital magazine or whatever promotional material that you do for your client, imagine if there was a little bit of information on some things that you'll be discussing with your attorney and discussing with your lender, and you're giving just some bullets of like where to ask and what to look for, let them explain it. But at least as the agent, you've at least highlighted some of those areas.
Touch the base, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that just you guys understanding them all, but.
It's important too that so you wanna add to your other classes, going through, the final numbers when things are broken down. Like a lot of people don't know, you have to, as a home, like if you're buying a home, you're buying a year of homeowner's insurance upfront. And then whether you're escrowing or not going into the future, you could, depends if you're 20% down or more. But, a lot of people don't understand that you're buying a whole year upfront.
Oh, yeah, we get asked all the time, why am I paying an escrow?
And then you're putting in an escrow and you're like, well, that's for next year actually, towards next year's policy.
I know.
And then they're like, what?
What?
I know,
Well,
right?
I'll do it
I
that
don't wanna
next
do
year.
that. There was one woman,
Yeah.
she was 5% down. And she was, well, I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna do that.
That ship is,
Yeah, right, right.
Um,
And she's like,
we
"Yes."
get asked a lot of questions, frankly, and our paralegals do, on numbers that should have been addressed by the loan officer a month before.
Right.
And either the question wasn't asked or it wasn't properly answered. So,
And I think the difference too, I like to talk about which ones are costs and which ones are actually closing costs.
Right.
Some of them are just cost of sale.
Right.
Like the property tax
Exactly,
when you're
and some
paying
things are
for it.
escrows and stuff like
Yeah.
that, it's your money, they're just holding it.
But it's not a closing cost. I mean,
No, no, it's not.
But there's so many of a list. If you have oil left in the tank, then they get prorated, da. And this is, I mean, you're not gonna know, I don't wanna overwhelm some of the agents that are on there, are new agents. You're not gonna know everything at the beginning. But it is overwhelming, and if you did have these cheat sheets and had certain classes on them, then you would understand, that's a good one, Jen, on what the closing costs really look like for a couple's different scenarios. One being with oil, one maybe being this, one being with that,
Condo
because they are
versus house.
surprised, they don't know, they're like, I thought I was putting 5% down and I was good, I'm like, no.
And the other one,
You're
the other one,
taking
you're
your
putting
turn,
your
you know,
classes,
this stuff.
you're putting your classes together is comparing people's pre-approvals, because, it's, just because someone has a pre-approval, I mean, some of those ones.
They're not all equal.
One was,
They're not
one
all
had said, we've taken your verbal information and we're, like,
Most,
verbal.
Well,
most,
it's-
most pre-approvals are simply credit report and what you tell them your income is. That's it.
But some of them write them, that's why I like to see the
Alright.
ones that are really good, that's gone through, we have looked at everything, we have everything, we're just waiting for an
Okay,
address.
but that's-
it's
But
gone
that's a
through underwriting,
pre-approval versus a pre-qual.
and it's actually.
Well, we unfortunately use the names interchangeably.
Well, I mean,
And some lenders do.
I'm
Yeah.
just
Tell you,
saying.
but-
They can't tell you they're all, they all tell you they're.
They all say pre-approval.
All right, now listing agents, I'm gonna ask you, since we're a listing agent, please, preview the house before the final walkthrough. I have had more bad walkthroughs lately than you can shake a stick at. I had one this morning where the listing agent has been out of town through the whole transaction, she's been in Florida. And she didn't send like a colleague over to make sure everything was good before the buyer's agent showed up with 2 folks to the walkthrough. And it was like disgusting.
Yeah, I mean,
Like everything was gone, like all the furniture was gone, all the boxes were gone,
That's it.
but it was like, there was hair in the freezer.
Yeah, I don't get
yeah,
that.
My clients were so upset.
let me be a little more
That's
specific.
TMI.
Let me be a little more specific.
That happened to me once.
Let me
Yeah,
be a little more,
disgusting.
be more specific. If there are repairs, that are part of the transaction, don't wait until the night before to find out if the
See if they
repairs
did
get
them,
done.
yeah.
And don't take somebody's word for it that the work is done.
Show me a picture.
Yeah, preview.
A lot of
preview.
stuff,
Go through it.
because a lot of stuff on repairs is subjective. Some of it is, fix the light switch, well, if the lights go on, the light switch is okay. That's an easy one, but they're not always like that. So don't just leave it.
Yeah, you have to give them a little guidance as to what room clean means. They don't have to have professional cleaners in there, but the place should look like how they would want it to look if they were buying it. They wouldn't want to come in and see that the top of the stove is all sticky, or that there's old food left in the refrigerator, or that there's literally like dirt on the floor that wasn't room clean.
But
That's what
it's
this house looks
unfortunate
like.
that you have to put that in your,
Isn't that?
I'm serious, it's unfortunate that you have to actually even put room swept clean.
You would
Never
think
mind.
common sense would tell you that, but it doesn't.
Right,
Common
and I
sense says
say,
the least common
and I
of all
say
sense.
to agents, like in the program, I say, sometimes you're thinking about a gift, sometimes you wanna give to your clients, if that's how you're gonna do your value proposition. Sometimes I would consider, maybe when you get the house professionally cleaned for $150 and have a professional cleaner to go in, if the seller is not doing that, 'cause I don't
That's
know
what this agent did today. My buyer's agent, the one today, they were so upset, she said, and she couldn't get anywhere with the listing agent, she said, no, I'm sending the Mary Maids in this afternoon, don't worry about it, and she paid for it, and I said, so that's a full service realtor right there.
Yeah.
That took care of you, they said she absolutely was, they were thrilled. So it's like silly things that you think you don't have to tell people, but you do. We're bumping up on your 1 o'clock hour, and we're gonna need the room, so is there anything
Yes.
else that you guys have any questions for since last time? You? All right, well, if you think of anything you want us to cover next month,
Yeah, and
feel free to let us
and
know.
Jamie and I did talk about this yesterday.
We did.
If you leave it up to us as to what to talk about, there's only, there's not a billion things to talk about. So we find ourselves repeating some of the same topics because we can talk all the time. But we're not in your shoes, and we don't know what you're dealing with. And everything we talked about today are things that you guys deal with on a day-to-day basis. If you let Jamie know, let Ashley know, let us know that there are things that you need to get some answers to, I promise you we'll cover. Jamie and I had this conversation, I know Jen was involved, about the mortgage contingency yesterday. Great,
That was amazing.
so we addressed it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think creating a library, by the way, for those agents that are coming in, so that I like having an open discussion lunch and learn with you guys, because you never know who's gonna be in here, and you have experienced agents and you have new agents in here. And so sometimes the experienced agents do wanna hear something so simple, and then they're like, I've already been there, done that. Whereas if we already know the topic at hand,
yeah.
that will drive the people to
Right.
either be able to watch it, tape it, be a part of it. But I do still think once a quarter, we can, and I was gonna present this too, maybe we could think of, after hours, we do a KW now, we do a KW after hours once a month. And it's from like 5 to 6:30, we got a food truck,
Sure.
but we could do something and call it that, after hours with Mitchell and Ann. And it could be 4 to 5, or it could be later in the day.
Absolutely,
And that
we can
could
do
be more of a mastermind
Sure,
quarterly that we're doing here, where we're just throwing ideas,
love to
but
do
then
it,
managing the ones moving forward.
love to do it, love to
Yeah,
get
we
as
can
many
do that.
people together as we can, because I need still, I'm learning new stuff, and I'm in this longer than anybody. So I'm sure that's the case with you guys, and nobody can be that smart, so. All right, thank you guys, appreciate it very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Please
All good stuff.
get your friends to eat.
Thank you so much.